Welcome. It's not just Michael and Michael, but it's Natalie joining because we have a lot to talk about. You heard from the woman, so I think it's only right that a woman be up here to have this conversation with you guys. Uh, that was Angel Reese. That was Alexis Morris. That was just all of the LSU players speaking and talking about their reaction to winning, but also how the media has treated them, which has been a constant theme, not just of the Final Four, not just of the championship game, but all season. Angel Reese has been dealing with it. Dawn Staley has been speaking out about it all year in terms of coverage of women's basketball, but also the coverage of her team specifically. And this has been a thing that we've talked about on the show. I've addressed it and we've had guests on to address it. So now the world got to see it. They got to see it because after LSU won, and this is what we should be talking about. We should be talking about LSU winning and the fact that they dominated. But instead, or also, we have to talk about the treatment and the commentary on Angel Reese after the game because she decided to taunt Caitlin Clark because she won. And the commentary that ensued afterwards was problematic.
Well, what was so problematic? No, stay right there. Stay right on that curb. Keep the car running. Natalie, you're doing a great job. What was so problematic about the commentary, and problematic from whom, and problematic why? Let's get into that.
Sure. Well, I actually shouldn't even. I shouldn't sanitize it. It was racist commentary, is actually what it was.
Ooh, I like
we heard a lot of
all right.
dog whistles, a lot of coded language. So we heard classless. That was a common one that was used to show or to describe her, an idiot. I'm removing some curse words that were used to describe her. What else?
Yeah, the idiot. The idiot one was interesting.
The
idiot one was interesting because I didn't know if he was talking about somebody else or talking about himself. Probably talking about himself.
Yeah,
with that. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, garbage. I mean, these were the way grown white men were choosing to describe young Black girls. There you have it. Dave Portnoy, like, he has no business speaking about class. Keith Olbermann, as we already said what he said, and garbage. I mean, look at the words used to describe this young Black woman. Doing a taunt, by the way, that Caitlin Clark herself did in earlier games where it was celebrated. And we said, we love that women do these things. And yet this is how Angel Reese was described afterwards. But you know what I love about Angel Reese? She is unapologetic. She has been unapologetic all season. And so she doesn't care about how you describe her. And that's why she said, this is for the girls who look like me. This was bigger than me. And I'm so happy that she said that. And I stand behind her. And I know many of us do.
Yeah, you know, Mike, I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, there's a lot to get into with this tournament. First of all, the women's tournament was remarkable. It was remarkable in the product, the ratings backed it up. Just a lot of entertainment, a lot of great competitive games. The favorite did not win. I was rooting for South Carolina. I'll tell you that up front. I thought they were going to go back-to-back national championships. But Iowa did an amazing job on Friday night locking them down and getting them to play a game that they really didn't want to play. So props to Iowa and Caitlin Clark on Friday night, but give it up to LSU and Angel Reese and friends on Sunday afternoon. They really, even when Iowa made that run, made it look like they were going to come back, they cut it to like 7 or 8, then LSU put them away. But I want to say to both of you, you know, just watching women's basketball, as I've said many times, I continue to shout out my family. As I said many times, my cousin, Nikesha Sales, was on an undefeated national championship team in UConn in 1995. And I covered that team. I saw many of their games. And at that time, not just women's basketball, but women's sports. So they were undefeated in 95. The 1999 U.S. women's national soccer team with Mia Hamm and others, they were all celebrated, but they were celebrated not as their competitiveness. The dog that they had in them was minimized, and it was almost like this cutesy, it was pandering, it was condescending. as I look at it in retrospect, the coverage was condescending. They weren't focused. Their athletic feats were not emphasized enough. It was more like this cute little thing. And the sport has grown. The commentary needs to grow up. Dave Portnoy, grow up. Keith Olbermann, grow up. You're not talking about little girls playing basketball as like some little side alternative. This is a good product. They're taking it to the next level. The game is different. The NIL components from some of the women outweighs the men significantly. So they're good on the court, they're good off the court. And when we watch men play and we see them do all sorts of things, all sorts of antics, regardless of their race, we ain't got nothing to say about it, or very little to say about it. And all she did was point to her ring and then throw back, Mike, to Caitlin Clark, what Clark had already done earlier in the tournament. What are we talking about? What's the problem here? I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ironic that the double-double queen is not a face of double standards. I'm going to tell you, man, I loved it. I loved everything about last night. I loved everything, even the toxicity. I loved it all. Because it was necessary. You know, first of all, shout out to LSU. Phenomenal performance. Congratulations to LSU. First, and this is a school that has Shaquille O'Neal and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, previously known as Chris Jackson. First national championship in school history, right? So,
and Pete Maravich.
I got to tell you.
And Pistol Pete.
And Pete Maravich. And Pistol Pete. And Pistol Pete. I grew up on Shaq and Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, but yes, and Pistol Pete. So, shout out to LSU. And you're right, Natalie. That's what we should be talking about. But as we talked about last week, this is growth. This is growth because what I saw yesterday, both on the court and on social media, was passion, was investment. And the more emotionally invested people are in this great game, the more financially invested people will become in this great game and in these great women. Listen, man, the thing I like about Angel Reese is she's consistent. And Michael, you remember I got in some trouble because remember I came to the defense of Sha'Carri Richardson last summer. I was like, I'm all for people that keep that same energy. That same energy. Right. So Angel Reese, this is, but for the casuals and for the people that only tune in for the Final Four, even the final, they don't know this about her. This is who she is. This is who she's been. This is who she's always going to be. In a word, Natalie, you're right, unapologetic, right? So I love that about Angel Reese. Secondly, Caitlin Clark doesn't need anybody to protect her. She's doing just fine. And if she can, and I'm sure she would say if she can dish it, she can take it. She did it to Haley Van Lith. So this is what goes around comes around. Now, whether you feel like it was classless or it was unsportsmanlike, listen, man, this is sports, okay? Like this is we have long, this feels so much, I thought we were past this for women because this is Serena Williams. I mean, we've had this conversation so many times about women in sports and what's the proper behavior for women because as we've all said, guys do this kind of thing all the time. But what we also see all the time in men's sports is the racial double standard because a Tom Brady can go off on the sideline at his coaches and teammates and his leadership, but a black wide receiver or quarterback goes off and he's being a diva, okay? So in this instance, the double standard is clear, and I enjoyed and appreciated. I mean, obviously, poor foul language and name calling notwithstanding, I enjoyed people further exposing themselves, and I enjoyed people checking them right where they were on this issue. Like all last night and all this morning, has been a lot of people.
Mike, you're saying they being consistent too. They're keeping the same energy too.
Michael, you know the phrase that's been in my head since last week is learned and affirmed. Shout out to our boy Jim Trotter. Learned and affirmed. Lessons learned and affirmed. Like, these folks ain't telling us nothing we didn't already know. There are no new things under the sun when it comes to double standards for black people, double standards for women, and quadruple standards for black women, okay? So this was not a new conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. But here's the difference. Here's the difference about this weekend. Because I thought we would come in here today talking about the final and then talking about Dawn Staley, who we'll get to in more detail in a moment. But the theme with what Dawn Staley had to say, the theme of what Angel Reese had to say, is like, they're not just gonna sit here and take it anymore. These black women are fed the F up.
Yes.
Okay? They hear you, they see you, and they ain't just gonna sit there and take it quietly. So, as Angel said, this was bigger than her. She had this whole thing saved in drafts. Because and what Dawn Staley had to say about the coverage of South Carolina and what you guys discussed, Natalie, as you mentioned, and what Angel did on the court was nothing happens in a vacuum. Just like everybody is bringing their baggage to the conversation on social media and in public, these young women brought a season's worth of frustration, especially Angel, brought a season's worth of frustration and took it out on Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, who they felt like, wait a second, they've been watching do all the same stuff that she does and be praised for it. Again, that's not new. So this was something that, as she said, she couldn't wait to get off her chest. They couldn't wait to say, and I can't wait for next year because I'm enjoying it, and this is not good for the game. This is great for the game.
This was great for the game.
And this is toxic but healthy conversation or debate. Even if some people are not going to be swayed from where they are, or they're not going to change, and some things will never change.
I don't know about that. Let me push back. Hold on, let me push back. Where's the healthy conversation coming from? I mean,
just calling it out, just holding people accountable, just calling it out.
Okay, I guess.
Just not letting it slide. Like Dawn Staley did not. She said she was going to say what she had to say, win or lose,
regardless. Yeah.
Right. In the past, that's the reason why misogyny and sexism and racism, well, not the reason, but part of the reason why it's so rampant and it's so systemic is for so long it's gone unchecked. What I love about 2023, what I love about Dawn Staley, what I love about Angel Reese is it is not going unchecked. That's what I mean by healthy.
Yeah, agreed. And I loved everybody who were checking people, right? And I appreciate really all the white people who were checking people. And this is one thing that I have to give credit to with the people who are devoted and dedicated to covering women's basketball, who've been in this space, who've been bringing light to it, because many of them have been calling out the double standard. WNBA players, Kelsey Plum, I've noticed this before. Mm-hmm. She has called out the W for their standard because this bias, this distinction in the way white players versus the black players are discussed is not just in college. It is also exists at the W. It exists at the professional level.
It exists in every workplace in America.
Exactly.
And you know what, Natalie?
But you know what?
I'm so glad.
Nothing could be so blatant, though, than them getting so upset about what Angel Reese did when it was the exact same thing that Caitlin did. And when you show the side-by-side picture of it or the video of the two of them doing the same thing, now we got the reason why Caitlin's is different versus Angel. So it will just never stop. Even when you put the proof right in front of them, they're telling me, oh, well, you know, she didn't go around and taunt her for as long, or she didn't do it for as many seconds, or
yeah,
it's
okay,
just the most
all right.
absurd things I've ever heard.
It's crazy. Hey, Natalie, I'm going to say, I'm so glad that you all were ahead of this. This was last week. You were ahead of it. We talked about it. We talked about it right here in this space. So it's almost like maybe this is not where you want to be prophetic because you don't want this to happen, but it was prophetic. Talked about it, and the nation, more eyeballs saw it play out on Sunday afternoon. Last thing I'll say, Mike and Natalie, is I'm going to get me an Angel Reese LSU jersey. I'm getting me a jersey. Yes. I'm getting a jersey. Number 10, LSU. I'm rocking it right here on Brother from Another. Good for them. And I wasn't even room for them. I wasn't even room for them because of Monkey.
Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why.
After yesterday, I had to, but going into the weekend, I wanted South Carolina all the way.
I want to point out something that may not be as apparent to everyone, because for people who are, many of us who are fans of the sport and fans of these women, it was actually a tough decision. Like, once South Carolina got knocked out, for the culture, that is, it was a tough decision on who to root for, because like everyone loves Caitlin Clark. She's amazing. But there was a lot going on with Iowa and the fan base and in the arena. You know, Natasha Cloud spoke up on it, as well as just online. And I don't want to sit here and like say the whole Iowa fan base is bad, but throughout the Final Four and the championship, there were lots of reports of racism and racist things being said. And so, but some people don't like Kim either because of her comments on Brittany Griner and other things she has said. So a lot of us took the position like we are rooting for the players of LSU. And I've been an Angel Reese fan, so it was easy to root for them. But like there was also this cultural kind of thing, like we are not supporting Iowa. Like, shout out to Caitlin Clark, she's great, but we can't root for them, because there really was. I mean, people just throughout the whole weekend were saying their reports of things that were said to them in arena. And, you know, there's a lot of racism at play, and we do need to talk about it out loud and not hide it. And in fact, I felt like many of the headlines, even covering it, were still trying to sanitize it and not talking about the real issue. So that's why I want to talk about it. I want to be out loud about it. And I had no problem supporting Angel Reese. And I also want to point out just one last thing, why Alexis Morris made her comment, because a lot of people went at Alexis Morris and said, oh, you know, like she's attacking Caitlin, and she wasn't. When she said, Caitlin, you're a hell of a player, but you got to put some respect on our name, that was a message to the media. Not to Caitlin, because the media covered the games as though no other players exist. And part of that was also just, they were offended. That's the thing. Like, LSU felt disrespected by the way Iowa chose to cover South Carolina. They felt disrespected by it.
The self-check gesture. Alexis, there's video of Alexis going to outside the locker room to meet with Caitlin Clark, saying, man, she a dog. I can't wait to meet her. So the respect is there. The competitive respect is there. But ultimately, again, these are competitors. Wherever you come down on trash talking or showboating, like trash talking has been a part of sports since the dawn of time. Okay, so it's like if we remove the racial connotations and the racial double standards and even the context of the whole thing, and you're just like, hey, did she go too far? Some people may not dig it. Like, honestly, I mean, I coach. You know, y'all know I coach AAU basketball. If one of my players did it, I probably have a problem with it. But I'm not going to sit up here and tell Angel Reese how to be somebody that she's not, because again, this is who she's always been. Okay, and Caitlin Clark.
And you have a problem with it, man or woman, though, right? You're saying like you wouldn't like that.
Yeah, man or woman. Like if one of my boys did that, I'd be like, yo, chill or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But in the larger grand scheme of things, and when it comes to Angel Reese and her persona, this is who she has been consistently.
That's and Mike, I know we're up against it. So two quick things. One, I like what you just said there about trash talk. It's been going on for a long time. I mean, back in the day, Athens was talking trash to Sparta and vice versa. They used to go at it. Okay, that's just as long as we can remember. But
I don't know if that ended well for Athens.
It probably didn't. But for those people who have a problem with what they saw yesterday, do they also have a problem with Tyreek Hill going into the end zone saying peace, or guys just kind of like trotting backwards before they get into the end zone and falling in basketball, or the too short move in all sports? In basketball, in the NBA.
Too small is my favorite.
That's like, so, okay, and if you are, okay, I stand corrected, but I don't think you are. I think you're full of it. Other thing is, Natalie, I know you're very diplomatic. You're very careful not to paint the entire Iowa fan base with any kind of racist accusations. But isn't it interesting? Was there anything with Iowa and race in the news lately? Yeah. I'm starting to see here, Iowa. I'm starting to see a pattern, because the football team had a lot of issues They had a lot of issues over the last few years. It's been in the news. And here we go. Here we are again with the players saying, I don't like what's going on here. I'm not accusing you, but I'm watching. You can't see me. I can see you,
listen, though. There were some, you use the word problematic, Natalie, and it was. And the solution is to address it. I don't want to overstate it, because whether it's the University of Tennessee, whether it's Stanford, whether it's UConn, obviously, whether it's South Carolina, like, women's basketball has been healthy and growing and thriving for a long time. But this weekend really felt like a watershed moment for women's basketball. All of it, because, like, the next step in the coverage is when it goes beyond just the novelty of it and the appreciation of it, and we start using women's basketball the way we use other sports, which is as a launching pad for deeper, larger societal conversations. Women's basketball, I've never seen a country, again, not to be hyperbolic, I don't remember seeing a country this captivated by the women's Final Four. And I don't think it had anything to do with the men's lack of blue blood. Yeah. It was just good quality teams and storylines and personalities that people were drawn to. And this is an inflection point and a watershed moment for women's basketball.
Right. I remember a guy from Golden State doing a good night little gesture.
A shimmy?
or
a shimmy?
And holding up,
night.
Holding up his ring, saying ring.
Well, Dawn Staley said it all. Terrika Foster-Brasby, welcome to the show. We appreciate you joining us. You had some thoughts about what Dawn had to say. A lot of people felt she should have called out whoever made these comments. How do you feel about what she had to say? Oh, this Terrika.
I think she's frozen.
I think we had an issue with Terrika. Yeah. I mean, we definitely needed to get those names from Dawn. Like, I know she has too much class to call it out. You know, I know she has too much class.
She got class? She got class.
She got class. And she
what did I, what does that even mean?
Grace that this individual doesn't deserve. Whoever made those statements, she's providing them grace that they do not deserve. But yeah, I mean, Terrika was definitely one of the people calling for her to call out the names. And, you know, I think many of us wanted that. Mike, you said you wanted it.
Yeah, 100%. Because, you know, they needed to, I mean, listen, not only does she have class, and I don't know if class is necessarily applicable here, but I would say it wasn't worth it for her to make it that personal. Although I wish she would have. You know what I'm saying? Like, the people who need to know, and her message was well received. I wish she would have embarrassed them and caused them, but that's just me though. You know what I mean? I'm not sitting in that chair. She has to conduct herself differently than I can do from the comfort of my home or from my phone. So I get why she held back, even though her message was loud and clear. Because that's why it's been able to run rampant. And it goes to show whatever conversation it is. I mean, like, we're members of the media. So, I mean, I'm not, you know, it pains me to say this sometimes, but it's just like, the institution that we're a part of is institutionally racist, you know, and it's been dominated by the white perspective. It's been dominated by white men. So think about all the conversations. It's almost like, you know, acts of police violence being caught on camera. Think about all the stuff that's not caught on camera. Think about all the conversations that take place and all the perspectives that color, no pun intended, the coverage of black athletes. It's, again, I referenced Jim Trotter earlier, Terrika. It's like, that's why Jim is like, yo, where are the black people, you know, who are in charge of the coverage of a majority black league? This is one coach taking the time to call out one incident of nameless, faceless reporters having problematic, racist, sexist, whatever misogynistic conversations about one team. How long has this going on, and how rampant is this within mainstream media throughout America when it comes to covering not just women's college basketball, but women in general, black people in general, Terrika? Uh-oh.
Oh,
Goodness.
we got.
Will not let us be great. The
we got
internet
frozen
has no
again,
class
but you know what?
today. That
Yeah,
internet
that's
connection
right.
is classless right now.
Well, I'll say this, Mike and Natalie. You say you wish Dawn Staley had called that person out to embarrass them. That is suggesting that person would be embarrassed by the call out. You know, these streets are different today. So some people
At least
are looking for the.
At least accountable.
Hey, okay, that's true. But some people are looking for that attention. And I'm glad she didn't, because that attention will go the other way. And then she is unintentionally promoting somebody and bringing them attention that they probably don't deserve. And I want to say this word, that quote, you know, that quote that has been attributed to many people, Eleanor Roosevelt and others, you know, the quote, well-behaved women seldom make history. And so I think when we talk about class, it depends on who's saying it. I know what you mean when you say it.
Yeah.
But when some people say they have no class, show some class. What they want them to do is just sit down and be predictable and be quiet and be gracious and don't have opinions and don't have personality. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Because this is a new economy when it comes to sport. It's a newer, fresher, more vibrant, more diverse economy when it comes to sports. The athletes who play our sports got a little more something than they did 10 years ago, certainly than they did 20 years ago. So bring it on. I want Dawn Staley to say what she has to say. I want Angel Reese to do what she's got to do. Bring it on, all of them. So I don't know if class is the right word.
Class has been a coded word.
Right.
I've heard it, but then
It triggers me.
They could hide. But the reason why they could
triggers
hide
me a little bit.
But the reason why they could hide behind it is it's like, no, I don't. That's not what I mean. It's like it's perfect cover. You know, it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with race.
It's a
It has
micro.
everything to
No,
do
it never does.
how you believe we should behave, and whether or not the way we behave is acceptable or pleasing to you.
It's like, oh, you're very articulate. It's a microaggression, you know, and so I can say that to you guys, and it's different than if someone else says it, and that's just what it is. You know, it was. People had different reactions to what Dawn had to say. For many of us, it was like, we already know this, and we're like exhausted that she has to say this and repeat this. For some people, they felt pain, because it's like, why do we have to go through this? And you know, specifically, you know, what I felt in that moment was most of my thoughts were with Aaliyah Boston and what she and her teammates have had to deal with. You know, immediately after that game, Aaliyah covered her teammate who was crying because she didn't want them to have photos and video of her teammate crying because of how those same kind of photos were used against her a couple of years ago when they lost in the Final Four. And that image of her just kept being reused and reused. And it was traumatic. It was triggering. It was painful. And I mean, it was just too long for us to have. But Ari had an amazing thread talking about this and the responsibility of the media and how they use images of Black women, how they describe Black women. I mean, Terrika, you're here, so I mean, you can speak on it. But I mean, like that's who I was thinking of. Like, I hated that Dawn had to say this, but she's been speaking on this. But I was just so concerned about Aaliyah, who did actually break down still in her post game. But she was like, she wanted to cover her face. She wanted to hide. She didn't want the tears to be seen.
Yeah, I've been listening, and apologies for this whole crazy Wi-Fi situation, but I've been listening, and there are so many things to unpack here in this entire scenario. Number one, it isn't an isolated incident. It's not like this is the first time that we have heard the South Carolina Gamecocks be referenced in this way. And even, you know, I liken it to, you know, remember when we first started really trying to get people to hone in on how they described football players? They would say they're beast. They would say, oh, that's a thoroughbred. They would say, like, these are the same people who don't understand, or at least refuse to acknowledge that at some point in time in our history, these were the same terminologies and the same descriptions that were used against us when we were on the slave block, or the trading block, waiting to be sold. And so when you look at women's basketball and you think about how many times teams are described as extremely physical, that they're fighters, that these are things that she's acknowledging, that the way that these Black women are being described, even when you're trying to say in a category of, we're just talking about the game, we're just talking about, their style of play. These are all things that still relatively relate back to Black women and Black people being described as inferior or being aggressive. It's the same thing with us as Black women. Lord knows we can't show any emotion on any level, or else we're angry, we're divas, we're whatever. And so this is the same thing that we're seeing, and Dawn was tired of it. It had already, and again, I don't know if y'all remember this, but I sure do. There was a man by the name of Don Imus who called the whole Rutgers team nappy-headed you-know-whats. You know what I mean? So This is not the first time that this has happened in this sport. It is not the first time that it has happened with this team, and it got to a point where it needed to be addressed.
Terrika, connect what Coach Staley said after the semifinal loss to what transpired last night and the conversation that took place in the aftermath of Angel Reese celebrating at the expense of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, well, when LSU's football team won the national championship in 2020, Joe Burrow, who I love Joe Burrow, I'm Team Burrow Hive, let's do it, right? But when Joe Burrow was walking off that field, Joe Burrow was doing this. Joe Burrow was doing this. I didn't see not a single person have anything to say about Joe Burrow's gesture. It was looked at as, that's a champion. That's the kind of guy that I want on my team. That's the kind of guy that I would love to, exactly, same energy. But women are not allowed to be emotional. Women are not allowed to show any type of anything other than what white America, and I don't really play, respectability politics, so I'm gonna just call it what it is. Anything that white America does not seem or dignify as classy to them is then wrong for us. And that's exactly what this is. Now, I have actually been criticized this morning because I conducted a segment that was posted and displayed and aired well before the Final Four aired, well before any of that, because I believe that trash talk is warranted in sports. So I did a segment on Caitlin Clark's, it's fun. I did a segment on Caitlin Clark's trash talk ahead of the Louisville game, well, during the Louisville game, when she, said to her friend, Haley Bliss, you're down 15 points, shut up, right? Yep. And so I asked the Iowa team, as much as she trash talk, I also hear from you guys, because unlike other people that are criticizing, I'm actually in this sport. I'm actually talking to players. I'm actually covering these teams. So I said, I actually also hear that she motivates you guys, that she's a great motivator for your team. So you guys tell me your favorite moment of her either motivating you or talking trash on the court. And one of the things that they told me is that when she was doing this, she actually wasn't doing it to a player. She was doing it to a coach who was sitting on the bench, because the coach and her had some inside joke that was going on. And so she was doing it to one of the player development coaches. She wasn't even doing it to the opposition. And that's all fine and well. Personally, I could care less who you were doing it to. If LSU wanted to use that as motivation to put up 102 points on you, let them do what they do. That's sports.
But let me say this one thing, though. And hear me out when I say this, because it's going to sound like but it's not. Joe Burrow, or even for that matter, Aaron Donald, they didn't do it in the direction of the opposition the way that Angel Reese did to Caitlin Clark last night. But I understand why Angel Reese did it, because it seems like there was some understandable resentment. And that's why I should have connected, because there was understandable resentment toward Caitlin Clark. Not that she's not a great player, not that they don't respect her, but Caitlin Clark got the smoke for the white privilege that she experiences from the media. So Caitlin Clark was getting it from, like, Angel Reese was really going at the media. Angel Reese was really going at the establishment when she was doing that to Caitlin Clark, because she's seeing somebody that's the embodiment of this entire season of criticism that she spoke to after the game. Does that make sense? So it wasn't exactly apples to apples with Joe Burrow, but I understand exactly why Angel Reese acted out.
So sort of, because some of it was about the media, but some of it was directly to Caitlin Clark, because SEC sticks together. SEC sticks together as a group. Yeah. And one thing about the SEC this year is that they have been highly, as a conference, been disrespected in women's basketball. Outside of LSU, and Tennessee occasionally. Like, there were really no teams from I'm sorry, not Tennessee, outside of LSU and South Carolina. There were no teams. There were no teams that really cracked the top 10. There were no teams that were top. This is why it was so shocking to the world when Ole Miss defeated #1 Stanford in the tournament. Why? Ole Miss took South Carolina to overtime. Ole Miss is a team that is coached by a strong Black woman in Yolette McEwen. Ole Miss is a team that has done well this entire year. So why was it such a surprise that this team could be a Stanford team who was coming into the tournament down 2 of 3? They had lost 2 of their last 3. So realistically, the SEC was a conference that had been consistently disrespected all year. LSU knew that. You add to that the fact that Caitlin Clark had been getting so much attention, deservingly so, but just your feelings are, this person is being hyped up. Add to that the fact that there was a lot of criticism about LSU's schedule. Your schedule is soft. Y'all ain't played nobody, blah, 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 blah. Add to that the fact that you waved off Raven Johnson.
Right. You did the self-check thing.
They took that very disrespectful.
Right.
It was
and they took that personally.
Yes.
And they took that personally.
And I took that personally. But Mike, Mike, Terrika, Nat, I mean, the wave off, that's just being a competitor. I mean, she's just being a competitor.
That's fine.
Why don't you just let that go?
I understand they were just being a competitor back in return. That's all.
But that, again,
whatever you need for the motivation.
Thank you for the insight, Terrika, but that's what we were saying. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and there was a whole lot of casuals chiming in last night. And I ain't saying I'm like hardcore like that, but this was there was a build-up to last night. That did not just happen spontaneously. Yeah.
Terrika, thanks for joining us, girl.
We'll talk to you soon about your Colts and see if your Colts draft the quarterback or make a play for tomorrow. We'll get you on later for that.
You've already mentioned it. There's like bits and details may leak out. There's like rumors, and obviously people have reactions based off those rumors. There's been some players maybe like not entirely happy with that. Would you say it's more of a hey, wait for the details to come out type of thing, or
they all have my number? They can reach out to me. I can give whatever information they may like. Tamika has everybody's numbers. They're more than welcome to take part in whatever processes they would like to take part in. But I think it's important to get all the facts. You begin to complain, but in this sport, in this business, and in the world in general, you can't make everybody happy. That's impossible. You got to be able to do what's best for the collective, and I think we've accomplished that. And I think as more information comes out, people will understand that we did our best.
I, for one, think that the new CBA, the new 7-year CBA, Sam Amick, that from The Athletic, that the NBA and the Players Association just agreed to, is a certified masterpiece. Like, I don't know which part I love more. I mean, whether it's players being allowed to invest in the NBA and WNBA teams being sponsored by gambling ventures or cannabis businesses, more than one designated supermax, the midseason tournament, positionless all-NBA, rights revenue going into BRI. I'm probably missing something. Interestingly enough, the one and done rule, minimum games played for awards. One and done is still a part of it. But what is your favorite part of the CBA? Or conversely, Sam, do you take exception with any part of this new CBA from what we know about it so far?
First of all, appreciate you guys having me. Michael, Natalie, thank you.
For coming through.
It's funny. I know Natalie's got some roots in the Bay. Draymond is being pretty subjective here. You know what I mean? Like, Draymond's mad about the Warriors situation. The second luxury tax apron and the kind of guardrails that it puts up for owners like Joe Lacob to go out and spend like drunken pirates when it comes to keeping dynasties together. I had not seen that video with CJ, and one quick thought on that front, it never ceases to amaze me in times of labor negotiations how the union even with guys that are very capable in the boardroom, good leaders, Chris Paul, CJ McCollum, they have a hard time getting their body together. Meaning, like, to hear CJ say, well, they got my number, is yet another sign, like we've seen in the past, that they have a hard time with the messaging being consistent. Draymond's pretty high profile. His criticism was very loud. Like you said, though, Michael, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here for the players, specifically
it's very modern.
That ability. Yeah, it is very modern. Well, and so I looked at it again today, and I mean, the ability to invest in NBA teams, I'm dying to see the fine print on this. Like, how is that going to work? I own X percentage of this team, but now I got traded. I play over here. I'm assuming and trusting that they work that type of stuff out. But that is very outside the box. That is very, player centric, pro player. The play-in tournament. I'm sorry, the midseason tournament. I'm a little lukewarm on. I understand they're trying to spice up the middle of the schedule. I hate the idea that inevitably we're going to have some games where, they assign arbitrary double value to some regular season games where maybe Team X has a bad run health-wise, and now that's having a ripple effect months later because of the way they set up the in-season tournament. We'll see how that goes. I'm a little bit of a creature of habit, so maybe I'm just being resistant to change. But all in all, I think they did get a lot of stuff that moves the league forward for players.
Well, Sam, I take great exception to it. So I do. And I feel like, obviously, what I think many people aren't missing, like Draymond was offended by it, but so were Warriors fans. And the reason why it's ridiculous is not just because the Warriors and teams like them, it's not just about Joe Lacob spending the money, because the Clippers spend money and other franchises have spent money and are over that apron. The issue is that when you develop, you're being penalized for developing and drafting your players, because the Warriors are hitting their apron because largely their core are players that they drafted and develop. Like, they didn't just go out and buy a team. Steph, Dre, Clay, Jordan Poole, who's going to kick in next year, right? These were all players who they drafted, and there's no kind of exception made for that. So now they're paying these guys because they deserve the money. But now, as a result of this penalty, either they let the guys walk, and these other teams who didn't have the same success get to benefit from the Warriors' work, or they keep them and they don't have access to the mid-level exception. They don't have access on the buyout market to go get guys. They wouldn't have been able to even acquire a Dante this year. I don't see how that's fair. You want the teams to develop, but yet you're penalizing a team that developed.
Very, very valid points. I get the sense from the NBA's standpoint that the counter for them, agree or disagree, I think part of what's happening here, everybody, is that the owners, and the Bucks are a good example. My understanding, my kind of insight and intel on it is the Bucks' motivation, Mark Lazary, partly to sell, was that he looked at a future in which paying Chris Middleton, paying Brook Lopez, paying Giannis Antetokounmpo, paying Drew Holiday was untenable unless, and not even if you do win a championship. The revenue that came into that franchise, even with the championship, the valuation increase that came into that franchise, even with the championship, their understanding of it did not justify the cost year over year over year. And the tough reality the NBA is faced with is that when it comes to the type of people with the type of bank accounts to own these franchises, that pool of people is obviously incredibly small because of how much cash we are talking about. And I get the sense with Michael Jordan now in talks of, selling Charlotte, with the Phoenix having been sold, you start hearing more and more rumblings of these teams and these owners essentially saying, man, you know what? I could just flip this thing, get out of this NBA business, make all my money now because I don't want to pay these prices to compete, to contend. The fan in me 100% is on your side. I think the business reality is such that they don't want these organizations to become short-term ownership time and again because the owners don't like the formula, if that makes sense.
Hey, but on the bright side, they ain't testing for weed no more. So there's that. Hey, Sam, thank you so much, man. we appreciate you coming through and dropping knowledge, man. Let's do it again soon, all right?
Of course, guys. Appreciate you. Have a good day.
You too, brother.
All right, thanks, Sam.
I've been watching basketball for a long time. Since before you were born, Natalie. I have never seen anybody do this. I have never seen this whole new means to follow your shot. Follow your shot, like, I mean, a 7-footer taking a 3 and jamming home the miss. Like, they don't do that in dunk contests.
You know what I've seen? I mean, not a dunk. Not a dunk. Now, I've seen an old play. I think it's Larry Bird missing the shot.
Yeah, Larry Bird.
And then catching the rebound, but he shoots it.
Yeah, he shoots it.
But this,
yeah. I mean, that's like, but look how small the court looks to him. Like, it looks like it looked like a driveway to him. Like, it don't even look like a regulation basketball court. Like,
but you know,
this dude is insane.
You know what I like about, Natalie, you know what I like about it though?
What?
Play it one more time. It's not just the missed 3 and not the follow-up dunk. It's his response. He handled it with class.
And he barely even jumped.
I'm just playing with y'all. I'm just playing with y'all. This just gets me going. I just can't get past it. But by the way, whatever happened to the tanking for Wemby?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a lot of people are really tanking for him. I thought Utah would. Oklahoma.
The play-in got rid of all of that. Play-in got rid of all of that.
But they don't look as nasty as I thought they'd be. Now, Detroit, I thought Detroit was trying to play better. In Houston, they looked terrible, but I thought it was supposed to be like 5 or 6 teams that were going to be bad. I mean,
players try to win, orgs try to take.
Hey, Natalie. Stay classy, Natalie.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.